This just sparks a whole new conversation for the San Antonio Spurs, as on Sam Vecini's recent podcast, we learned some very interesting information about Victor Wembanyama and something he has been working on that brings a game-changing element to not only the offense, but the defense. We got to dive into exactly what was said and how it affects the Spurs, but to do a complete 180, a new article from a Wolves writer for The Athletic, John Krasinski, looks into what the Minnesota Timberwolves season and trade deadline could look like, and he mentions one Spur by name as a trade candidate that I honestly believe is completely ridiculous, and you will to all of that coming up on this episode of Spurs Digest. And you know what? We'll start right there with The Athletic. John Krasinski, how much has the Timberwolves' identity changed, and what comes next? Mailbag. Look, if you're interested in the Timberwolves, this is a great mailbag, but whenever I see a San Antonio Spur pop up in articles like this, well, we got to talk about it. And this came in a section where they were like, hey, you know, we're moving up towards deadline. What might happen if the trade deadline's approaching and the point guard situation isn't getting better? What trade would you pursue if you were Tim Connolly? And, you know, John was kind of like, it's hard to put a name on that. It's hard to figure out which teams might be selling come deadline. But what he knows is that if the PG spot's not solidified, the rest of the team looks primed for a deep run, Connolly will not hesitate to pull the trigger. And fair enough. I mean, I think if you're any team, especially a team like Minnesota, who has been kind of starved for success for a long part of their franchise's history, but is looking to be in a pretty decent spot right now, at least in terms of putting together a competitive roster, you would naturally want to add at a position that you're struggling with at the trade deadline. I think we all feel the same way. But it's the name that he brought up that had me questioning a lot of things. I'll show you. So he said maybe the Spurs would part with De'Aaron Fox if things aren't going well there. Though the money would give me pause. And I just, look, I know what you guys are probably already saying. Maybe you thought about De'Aaron Fox anyway. Like, you saw my video yesterday. Like, I feel like the De'Aaron Fox talk has started to get out of control. I don't really understand how a beat writer for another team, look, that's nothing against John Krasinski, he does a lot of amazing work, obviously, but like, I don't understand why the general perception is that San Antonio, who just signed their all-star, former all-NBA point guard to a 5-year max extension, would be willing to trade him before that extension even kicks in, even if the Spurs are like looking to be in a playoff spot. First of all, the only world, in my mind, that the Spurs are ever even considering moving on from any kind of decent player on the roster, leave Fox out of this. Anyone come trade deadline time as if we're a far cry from a playoff spot, and it's like, well, things have not gone to plan. Maybe we recoup some assets and just give Dylan Harper some run down the stretch, whatever. That's the only way. Like, I don't get it. Victor Wembanyama, who we're going to talk about in just a minute, is primed to be like an MVP candidate this year. Let's be honest. The Spurs' depth is looking amazing. Castle ready to take that lead. We got Dylan Harper. Why, if you're a team like San Antonio that has just made a commitment to keeping a lot of your star players, developing your young players, pushed forward with a core of athletic and talented players, why would you ever be willing to give him up? Now, I know this is just a hypothetical, but like, it just goes to this broader theme of people thinking like, pretty much everyone looking at the Spurs saying, doom and gloom. And look, I said this was going to happen. You know, at some point when Victor Wembanyama starts to look like he's going to maybe take over the league, look, we haven't seen this full 100% version of the Spurs yet, so it's hard to say, but I think the general perception, of course, naturally when a team gets better, they have a lot of stars, they have a lot of good players, people tend to shift negatively towards them, right? Because they always want to find something to not like. Spurs, likable when they're not very good, whatever, you know, they're just the Spurs, okay, it's fine, they've won for years. Now we're starting to get better again, and it's like, yeah, what if they trade De'Aaron Fox, though? Their all-star level point guard who could average like 25 a game this year. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up again because it's like, it's fascinating to me to go check around everywhere and see this kind of talk around the Spurs, around trading guys like Fox. I don't know. It's surprising to me, but maybe not to you. I'd love to hear your thoughts, but please also go check out the rest of the article. There's some great talk on the Wolves there. And again, this is not a negative thing against the author, just an interesting thing that I've seen trending. However, the big thing today, and I actually did see this first mentioned on Air Alamo, but I wanted to go check the podcast out for myself because I wanted to hear what they had to say. And on the recent episode of Sam Vecini's podcast, he had his guest on, they were talking about the top 8 defenders in the NBA. And first off, they had Wemby literally at number 1. I mean, look, I don't think there's any surprise there. They were basically saying, like, Wemby's defensive gravity is ridiculous. And they even said, look, even his positioning at times is like neutral, like average. It doesn't even matter, though, because he can recover so well that even a guy who's in neutral positioning a lot of the time, like, he can still recover because he is the most mobile player at his size probably in the history of the sport. But what I found interesting was one little part where Bryce Simon, who was the guest on the podcast, said, I also had, watching him, he was starting to do these tip outlet passes that were really creative and really fun. And I do believe Aaron Allen did an article on this, but I wanted to just look at what he was saying and how that would affect the San Antonio Spurs, because I was like, that is really interesting. And then he expanded, which is kind of where my thought naturally went to. And again, this is all within the context of how important he is defensively, and they were fresh off discussing his defensive rebounding and how that is a big impact on defensive skill. And I feel like that gets overlooked a lot. Like, if you're a good defensive rebounder, that is effectively ending a possession for the offense. So that is a really good thing too. And they were talking about how good Wemby is. But the quote was this. Actually, I'll go on this side. Think about the outlet passes that he can throw, Sam. Bryce was talking to Sam Vecenie, of course, that other players may not be able to. If he's processing, okay, I can get this rebound, I can tip outlet to Dylan Harper and get him in transition a second faster because I don't have to come down and pivot and make the outlet pass. That's just another added aspect to his defensive impact. So the guy that is already the favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year, who I think most people, or many people at the very least, would choose as the best defender in the NBA, this is such a cool thing because we know how Wemby likes to train. He's training with all kinds of legends. But he loves the little things that improves his game on the grand scheme. He keeps himself in good shape, of course, keeps himself flexible to lower the risk of injury. But these little aspects to his game like this, tip passes, we've seen Jokic do a couple of these. Now, Jokic is one of the best outlet passers in the league, but tip passes are something that he's done before, but not super often. But like, just picture that, right? Victor Wembanyama, the rebound is coming towards him, and instead of grabbing, turning, passing the ball, he just tips it down to like a point guard. And again, that 1 second difference in the NBA as you're heading into transition, especially if the defense knows or the offense knows it's coming. I guess, the team that Wemby's on. If the Spurs know it's coming and you have Harper or Fox, like Fox is the guy that I'm thinking about, right? Because De'Aaron Fox is so fast. He's unbelievably fast. If he knows it's coming and the rebound's coming to Wemby and he's kind of going up for that and he's looking at where Fox is, a little tap and off you go, that is going to turn into one of the most electric transition offenses in the NBA. And so it's these little things, right? A team that's looking to play fast, when you have this guy doing what he does already is enough because he ends so many possessions with blocks, controlled blocks as well. Like, I feel like that's another thing you could have added to this podcast. The fact that when he blocks shots, he's not doing, not that it was bad what prime Dwight Howard was doing, but I mean, you watch prime Dwight swatting that stuff into the crowd. Wemby doesn't really do that. He'll just grab the ball, he'll grab it, or he'll knock it straight down to his feet. He does that a lot. Yeah, sometimes it's fun to send the ball out into the audience, but the controlled blocks, the steals, and how he's looking to transition from defense to offense is what makes his defense and the San Antonio Spurs roster this season look even more exciting. Again, with the pure athleticism. I mean, if you ask me, it's one of the more athletic teams in the league. I guess that's yet to be proven, but Fox and Harper and Castle, my gosh, those three of the more athletic guards in the league. Now, a lot of guards are very athletic, but those three are crazy. Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Carter Bryant's a freak athlete. Vassell is reasonable, obviously. Sochan, and then Wemby is, for his size, a ridiculous athlete, as we all know. So it's a cool little thing that I heard about there, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts on Wemby and Fox. It's kind of yin and yang here of today's episode. Some super positive, fun, cool stuff, some crazy trade ideas. I don't know. It's always fun to talk about this kind of stuff this time of year. And hey, the good thing is Spurs basketball is coming back sooner than you think. So hey, if you want to stay up to date every day on all the latest Spurs news, not only in the off season where we're posting all kinds of content for you, it's going to be happening in the regular season too. Daily videos, game reactions, recaps, trades, all that stuff. This is the spot to be. So hit that free subscribe button. Thank you so much for tuning in. I've been your host, Josh Gosse, and I'll catch you all in the next one.